Tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is actually an illness that in the Western world we thought we had won the battle against it. However, it has made a real big comeback in patients with autoimmune or immune deficiency diseases such as AIDS, HIV/AIDS, which lowers your immune system, and then an illness like tuberculosis can take advantage of your body being weakened. So it's made a bit of a comeback. It is another bacteria-caused disease. It's got its name from the nodules and tuberculosis cavities that form inside a patient's lungs. So how does tuberculosis spread? It can spread on little air droplets, so aerosol transmissions, or little cough and sneeze droplets. You're quite familiar with that idea from COVID. However, it's slower. It can take up to 3 weeks of living with an infected person in the same household until you actually have it, if you are a person with a healthy immune system. Obviously different if your immune system is weakened by HIV/AIDS. Also, droplets or bigger drops, if people spit, besides it being quite a disgusting and gross habit, in inner cities, if people spit and spit and spit all the time, for example, you've just got an increased number of cases from the little droplets that are everywhere from having spit marks on the floor. Surprise, surprise, the symptoms, as it does affect your lungs, includes chest pain and a cough. You're producing a lot of phlegm, sometimes blood in that phlegm as you're coughing that up. Your immune system will be working overdrive, so you get fever, chills. Your lymph nodes, particularly the ones in your neck that are linked to your lungs, they may swell up. You may also lose your appetite and just feel fatigued and tired as your body is fighting it. General course of treatment is antibiotics. It is a bacteria, so it is treatable with antibiotics. Now here comes a question to you personally. The NHS has stopped vaccinating people against tuberculosis in general. However, in specific at-risk groups, the BCG vaccine, which is the vaccine against tuberculosis, is given to babies and youngsters if you are in a family that has got relations to a country where tuberculosis is still endemic and still kind of causing a lot of havoc, as you might have visitors from abroad in your home, and then you might actually catch it this way around. Also, for a while still, the vaccine was given if you're living in inner cities, obviously to do with the spitting problem, and because you're in a close sort of aerosol transmission situation very often if you're, let's say, on the underground or on buses together, and just that density of a population, that just means that anything spreads quicker. We're just about to move on to the next one, which is smallpox. The reason why I don't want to quite move on yet, if you're vaccinating only a pouch or a specific grouping within a population, why would you want to do that? Why don't we vaccinate everybody? Generally, it's cost cutting or vaccine availability. In the case of the tuberculosis vaccine, it is just cost cutting, because if you don't need to vaccinate everybody because they're clearly not at risk, then you are only investing money in the areas where actually people may potentially contract tuberculosis. Now, with smallpox, towards the end of the long years of, well, centuries of human populations fighting with smallpox, they did something called ring vaccinations. They literally just vaccinate the area around an outbreak and all the contacts. I'm hoping that at some point with COVID, we're going to reach that stage where we just do ring vaccinations. So smallpox, and you've seen the not so pretty pictures on the previous slides. It is caused by a virus. If you've ever had chicken pox, think of that as the baby version of smallpox. It is transmitted through the air, through saliva, through body contact, through blood. What does it cause? It causes rashes, fluid-filled blisters, and I'm not talking small blisters, big bubbles, scars, blindness, limb deformities, and the mortality rate is not good. 60% of people who contracted smallpox do die. So it's not a favourable number, this one here. What can you do? It's a virus. There wasn't much that we could do while it was active. However, through developing a vaccine, you can prevent people catching it. So antiviral drugs are far and few in between if they're working at all. So that is not really an option. So it is a keeping the person going while you're waiting and hoping that the immune system will do its thing. Very often, if your body is weakened from a virus, you can get a secondary bacterial infection. And obviously, treating that with antibiotics is a possibility. So, have we won a victory against smallpox? In the bigger scheme of things, I suppose we could say yes. The vaccine that was eventually developed, which initially was a similar strain to smallpox, which is cowpox, affecting animal populations, of course, by the name that should kind of give it away. Now, the initial vaccine did have side effects, serious side effects, and caused too many deaths. So there was a second type of vaccine developed later on, which produced a nice immune response and proved to be quite effective. Until then, the only thing that could really be done if somebody is infected, isolate them so that it won't spread further. Now, it would be nice to say that we got rid of the virus altogether. No, we decided to keep some of it, and now comes the huge question: which labs around the world in which countries should be having the right to hold on to this virus and which ones shouldn't? But that I shall leave to you and your futures to hopefully sort out. Little side note here, smallpox has been around in the Egyptian times, so 1,000 years before our time scale, but our time counting has begun, has been around for a long period of time. If you're doing this with the textbook, I'm going forward a little bit here because influenza is going to keep us busy for quite some time. Malaria is quicker to cover, so hence just wanting to get that one out of the way. You will remember from your GCSE days that it is an illness that is somehow taking place in a mosquito and in a human, and back in a mosquito and back in a human. You will remember that it wasn't a virus, it wasn't a bacteria, it wasn't a fungus, it was one of those protista organisms. Right, malaria is caused by a Plasmodium, which is one of those protista. There are 5 different species. The 2 of them that cause most deaths are named here. I will not even try to pronounce those here for you, I'm afraid. How does it spread? There are quite a few different types of mosquitoes, and Anopheles is one particular type of mosquito, and it's only the females of those that actually take blood meals and kind of sting us and bite us. The males, nice as they are, they're feeding on a plant nectar. It's the females that are the blood-sucking ones, and obviously through that they are acting as animal vector. In some scientific contexts, we're actually talking about malaria being a pandemic, as it does really affect most of the planet. However, it is definitely endemic during wet seasons in hotter climates where you've got the right conditions for the mosquito itself to breed and reproduce. You need basically warm, stagnant water for that. So if you look at the map again, we've got vast areas of Africa, South America, and the tropical areas in Asia as the subtropical regions, basically, where it is spreading. During wet seasons, it's endemic, and like I said earlier, as it affects millions of people worldwide, it can be classed as pandemic. Right, so let's look at the life cycle of that Plasmodium. It can do sexual and asexual reproduction, so we're having both mitosis and meiosis events taking place during the life cycle of one of those Plasmodium, which makes it a little bit confusing. What takes place if a person is infected? We'll get to how we get to the gametocytes in the first place, but the gametocytes are the sexually reproducing stage. Some meiosis events taking place. That makes zygotes. You know the term zygote as a fertilized sex cell, which then the gametocyte, that's the gametocyte is taking up in the mosquito's belly in the gut system. Now there they develop into an infective stage called sporozytes. Now, sporozytes, they then, right from the zygote, they kind of grow up in a the digestive tract of a mosquito. You get the infective stage, which are sporozytes. So now these ones are the grown-ups. They migrate from the digestive system of the mosquito into the actual saliva part, which means as soon as female mosquito is taking its next blood meal, the mosquito then injects those sporozytes into human. Now, these sporozytes travel into the human liver, amongst other places, but in the liver is where the exciting stuff happens. In the liver, these sporozytes then reproduce asexually, so literally just cloning, mitosis, make many copies of themselves. These ones are called merozytes. Now, that's merozytes made from asexual reproduction. So gametocytes was sexual reproduction, merozytes is the asexual reproduction part. These merozytes are rampaging around the bloodstream, and particularly infecting the red blood cells, where they're doing even more asexual reproduction. Eventually you're going to get hemolysis. Eventually your red blood cells will burst and release all those merozytes, which infect even more red blood cells. And obviously at that point in time your immune system is having a right real angry moment. High fevers, because the immune system has no other means of attacking this anymore. The high fevers that come with malaria, and joint pains and everything pains, that's got to do with your red blood cells bursting and your immune system then trying to fight. Now, inside the red blood cells, there will be a switch to becoming gametocytes. So at some point here, we're going out of the asexual reproduction cycle. So mitosis, making clones of itself. There will be a switch and we're going back to the sexually reproducing stage. The sexually reproducing gametocytes make the zygotes again, which are being taken in by the next anaphil female mosquito that is going to take a blood meal of an infected person. Here we go, that's the life cycle. So how do you best treat malaria? Well, best thing is to not catch it in the first place. So all the spraying of pesticides like DDT, all the nets, all the preventative mosquito bracelets and preventative drugs that you can take, it's the best way forward, because once you have it, the treatment options are mediumly limited. Even though millions of people around the world are catching malaria, or contracting malaria around the world, the treatment options even now are not fantastic. Quinine, you might know the taste of it through tonic water a little bit. It's getting less and less effective. It has been a good treatment option, but wasn't quite there. It cannot really attack, any treatment options cannot attack while the Plasmodium is inside within a red blood cell or within liver cells. So you'd have to wait for the burst out phase, the merozytes being burst out and losing the bloodstream, or the gametocyte phase. Which isn't much fantastic. There are other drugs, that a new drug called Artemisinin, which is again starting to show resistance. It is a massive disease, and around the planet there are lots and lots of people infected, so resistance and mutations do happen there as well. Combinations of drugs are currently used. There is a video here to go with treatments and to go with what you could add to from the textbook, the sort of page 268, 9 and 270.